So let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead, Jeff, and jump us to the next slide. You are AI Book Club, yes. All right, Alan, we'll put you on the list if we get that started. I'd love to do it. I think it'd be fascinating to do. All right, so welcome to the fifth of six AI in Action sessions. If you're just joining us for the first time, this is a pre-Marketing AI Conference event series, a free series for people to learn about artificial intelligence. Let me pop up our poll here as we're doing this. So today's session is how to create content with AI. So as we were kind of hanging out, we asked the question, are you using any AI tools to generate blog posts, ads, social shares, or other content? 71% said no, 24% said yes, 5% not sure. Now, I'm wondering, Jeff, if we had said this includes Grammarly, Google Docs, Microsoft Word, if we wouldn't see this flipped and be like, oh, okay, well, if those are AI tools, then yes, I use them, because I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is how infused AI technology is into all these, support tools we use, these assistants we use to create content. So what we're going to talk about today with Jeff goes much deeper and really shows you how it's working. And Jeff is like the guy I go to when I have questions about this stuff. So you're in for a treat today if you're just joining us and you're trying to understand AI's implications on this. But let's go ahead and jump to the next slide, Jeff, and do quick intros. So I'm going to stop sharing the poll. So I'm Paul Raitzer. If you don't know me, founder and CEO of Marketing AI Institute. And this is my friend, Jeff Coyle, who is the co-founder and chief strategy officer for MarketMuse. So Jeff, take a moment and tell us about MarketMuse and your role there.
Sure. So MarketMuse is an AI-powered content intelligence platform that focuses on content quality. And so we're able to analyze pages, just page level. We're able to analyze any topic. And I'll get into some more details about how we work and show examples today. But really what we're focused on is giving marketers, content strategists, search engine optimization professionals, editorial teams, all really a basis to work together to be able to predict the outcomes of their content creation and update efforts, justify budgets, and do it with a lot less manual labor. So being able to put out a set, give a level of confidence in their content that they don't have before, and doing it without a lot of the painful processes that we all know exist, or subjective ones that just don't get it done from a performance perspective.
And as a user of MarketMuse, I can add some context. We've been, familiar with the technology for years, and Jeff and I have known each other probably going back 5-6 years through the content marketing community, got to know each other. So I've gotten a chance to actually see. I remember one time you and I were, gosh, where were we? I was in California. We were both at the same event. Was it with Acrolinks maybe? Yep. Where we were at that like small little boutique hotel. Yes. In some fancy place in California. And I remember you were like super excited about some innovation you'd made on like language generation. You were like, come on, I'll show you. Like, real. So, I mean, we've kind of geeked out about this stuff for years, and it's just come, the capabilities, not just of MarketMuse, but in the industry have come so far with what we can do with AI to generate language and enhance what you've already generated. So this is just going to be a really cool session. So a couple more quick housekeeping slides. Thank you to the sponsors. So that if you're just joining us for the first time, these are the 6 marketing technology companies and consultant companies that have joined us. The next slide, Jeff, and I think we're almost done with my piece. Last week, we had Celtra, Pandata, and Lilt. We talked about AI transforming creative workflows, ethical AI, and then localization of content to create a global customer experience. And then this week, we had Persado. Yesterday, we got MarketMuse today, and tomorrow is going to be Drift to wrap up the series. And then final housekeeping slide. We all are familiar with Zoom. Q&A is open throughout. I'll be monitoring that and jumping in when needed if we need to ask Jeff any immediate questions. Chat's there, our team's there to support you if you need help. Got a hashtag. We will have on demand for all of these sessions after the fact. And if you want to register for Drift session tomorrow and you're not already registered, you can use the bit.ly link there to do it. And with that, I'm going to kind of fade in the background and hang out here and jump in when I've got some observations or questions for Jeff. So Jeff, take it away.
Awesome. No, it's a great setup to talk about kind of what I'm going to walk through is all the stages of content, from ideation all the way to post-publish optimization, troubleshooting. and enhancements and updates, because a lot of times people they'll think, when you asked the question, it was a great one, because it was, what content am I creating? Do I create this with? But they're not thinking about all the stuff that goes into research planning all the way down to that post publish. And they're also not thinking about things like Google Smart Compose, which is, as you're typing in Gmail, you're getting a sentence completed. That's actually a form of generation. There's also generation components that I'm not going to get into a lot today, but in summarization, both abstractive, where it's like taking text and trying to write an abstract of that text, extractive summarization, where it's kind of taking snippets of existing content and it's trying to put it together in a way that's going to summarize it. So there's a lot of fields within natural language processing and natural language generation that are worthy to know. It's worthy for you to take time, learn about them, see if they're a good fit for your business. There's a lot of situations where you can speed things up outside of what I'm going to be talking about with natural language processing that's worth knowing. So I'll just back up quickly, talk about kind of how MarketMuse thinks about the world and the parts of this content funnel that we're looking to influence and amplify. First of all, we do it from the lens of quality and comprehensiveness. So our best friends are people who really care about the quality of content on their site. They have, a culture of content. They know that if in the right place, if covering the entire buy cycle, if covering all the questions that their clients have, their prospects have, this is a beautiful thing. Being there when someone needs you with content builds authority, builds trust. And we need to exhibit expertise with the content we create. So the problem is it's really hard to do that manually, right? So it's hard to do the research. Where you've got the wrong people doing the research. It's hard to build content briefs manually and have them be objective, to create a single source of truth for your writers, so that when they're writing, they know what those guardrails are. They know what their must-meets are. And then they can focus on less on things that aren't creative and more on things that use their subject matter expertise, or that use their expertise at writing. Building a great narrative and being creative is not just something you get. It's something that's part of your innate skills. It's also something that you develop. So what we see when we're talking to teams is that research, auditing, looking at existing content still yields a lot of subjective perspectives, and it's very unpredictable. Only a small fraction of teams that we work with when we first start working with them are even trying to predict the outcome of content. It's become commonplace that people just say, it's unpredictable. We kind of just guess. We publish and hope. And what that ends up yielding is content efficiency rates that are dramatically weak. On average, we see about 10%. So that means people publish 10 articles to get one that achieved its goals. Imagine what that does to the true cost of content, right? If you think something is, costing you X, and the real data you care about is how much does an effective piece of content cost me? And if that's 10X, what does that do to your campaigns? And then how much does this graph connect with you? These are the processes and these are the averages in our polling that we do. And you might think that artificial intelligence only works on the outside of this, right? It's kind of the outside band, the research, the planning, you might understand that briefs are involved. Or on the aftermarket side, I've published it. I'm looking at optimization. I'm doing reports that use analyses using artificial intelligence. But what we're looking to do is cram everything and speed it up while giving writers, research folks, search engine optimization professionals, content strategists more time to do the jobs they like doing, and to be more creative and strategic. Because nothing's worse than going through this process and then writing an article and then getting it kicked back at you because there was no source of truth. It degrades trust, and you spent a lot of time manually. Maybe you have your writers doing keyword research. Maybe you have your writers trying to be SEOs. Maybe you have your SEOs trying to write, right? All of these things are to make sure that we put the right people in the right jobs and also fast track and speed up the processes that can be automated or semi-automated.
One thing I'll say real quick, Jeff, is on that slide, like when we talk to people about getting started with AI, that's such a great fundamental way to look at it is how long does it take now? Because AI doesn't have to be some massive undertaking. It can be a single pilot project that you can say, from beginning to end, it takes 20 hours to do a effective article. We want to do 4 a month. It's 80 hours, if I did my math right. So if we just make this process more efficient, what is the value of that to our team? And again, if you're trying to convince like the C-suite to invest in AI tools, if you can make a business case like that, that it's in that one use case says over the year, we can save 60 hours per month or whatever, and the cost per person to do this work is X, like here's a value. And that's how a lot of times you're going to need to get support for this kind of initiative when you're starting to pilot AI in your company.
Yeah, I mean, the questions I ask really is it's on that efficiency, but it's the amount of time spent per page on average or per effective page.
Yeah.
Right. So think about that, how much that amplifies. Then, so that requires you to sit back and take this as your takeaway, do a content efficiency calculation, the amount of creation and update and enhancement cycles or motions that you've done versus how many actually achieved the goals that you expected or just created recurring value. Figure out what that number is. Because if you double that number this year or with this pilot, it changes the game on that. And you can be more confident in saying, hey, we're going to produce 10 articles. I'm pretty confident that at least 4 of them are going to do well versus last year where we only got 1 out of 10 efficiency.
Everybody's got that big tail where it's, there's like the 1 or 2 posts that brought in 80% of the traffic. Is your blog really working? Right. If it's 2 posts and maybe they're not even tied to your funnel, they were just like happen to hit on a couple of posts.
Yeah, right. Or it's intent mismatch, which I'll talk about in a second, where it's actually attracting queries and eyeballs, and then the page doesn't deliver. And we can, in MarketMuse, you can actually research that and look it up. But also the question I'll ask is, how often are you doing content inventories and content audits? And typically someone will say like never or once a year. And I'm like, well, you need that information on demand to be effective and surgically kind of aligned with what the market is saying, as well as who you are. You can't do that a year in advance. I mean, imagine writing about natural language generation a year ago and having that be your source of truth for research. I mean, the market has completely changed 3 times over in that situation. Planning and prioritization is also something that, for teams that are more evolved, they're not only leaning on subjectivity for this. For a long time, everyone has had their own KPIs and they've brought those to the table and then they've battled it out for prioritization with content. That has to change. And artificial intelligence can really take that out of the puzzle, but it can also do cool things like use subjective measures to train machine learning models. And that's really key to some of the work that we do, is to be able to say it's not just about the numbers, right? It's not just about subjective opinions. It can be about a collaboration or a composite of those things. And it's not, like a search engine optimization professional it's not just sorting descend by search volume, which, you would believe that that's still the best practice if you look at a lot of ways things are set up out there.
And real quick, if you heard him say training machine learning models and you're like, yeah, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. That's okay. Because I not to like spoil, but he's actually going to show us the engine behind all this, and it'll make more sense what he's explaining here, and you'll be able to see it in action in a couple minutes. Yeah.
And when I say that, it's really, when you're training a model, it's taking human data to then drive inputs that then that model gets smarter and smarter until it does things that you wouldn't expect. And
that's basically all you need to know. You don't need to understand the machine learning itself. Like what you just said is like, that's the takeaway.
That's all you need to know. It's like you start working on it, and then over time it just runs.
It gets smarter, makes you smarter.
Get smarter. And why do you want to get smarter? You want to know where you have existing authority, because that's going to give you more predictable content plans. That's all you got to think about, right? And then the creation side is that execution. The execution, people will think it's just about this machine writing stuff. That's it's one part of it, but it's only a small part of it. What it's also about is building the plan that says, what should we write or update? That's where the most of the money's made. It's making a good decision there. But then it's about building a great source of truth in the form of a content brief, so that When your writer is either writing from the brief or writing from a draft where they're enhancing the draft, they're confident that their finished product is going to be accepted by the rest of the company. That's key. Because if they go and do all that work and then it's like, nah, that's really not what we were going for, you lost all that productivity. And what I care about is productivity and efficiency and performance. And then I want to be able to go back to content and say, where did we miss the mark? Where do we have traffic going in and not converting? Where did we not deliver? Did we launch some stuff that isn't current anymore or doesn't appeal to today's intents? That's when content optimization comes into play. And when I talk about the plans, and that's where the money's made, it's true, right? Most people don't have any justification for the plans that they create, right? They don't know why they're creating it. It's like, someone told me to do it. Someone ordered it. And we can still help that person. But what we're really looking to do is to put justifications behind the plans. That's where the real teams excel. They're like, I know that if I update this pool of content every month, it's going to have a huge growth trajectory for our business. And all of our create motions are going to have an easier time performing. And they can answer why. It's because we're growing our authority. But most plans fit into one of these 4 buckets. What are the articles that if I were to create them today or update them today, they'd have the biggest impact on my business? These are the fun ones, right? Those are the ones we knock out in the first few months and get everybody hooked, right? But the goal-based ones are key too, because you're looking and saying, I want to own this topic. What do I need to do? Well, some people will go, okay, well, like one size fits all. I need to publish a long form guide and like hope it does well, right? What we do is we try to say, no. It's going to be really hard for you. Let's set expectations. You can't just write 1 page. You've got to create 30 pages on these topics and these related topics. And you've got to update these 8 pages and make sure that they're interwoven. That's going to get you there. So that plan is very different than hit and hope. So knowing what those goals are is key. And then the risks, you mentioned one, Paul, and I don't even know if you recognized that when you said it. Having a page that gets too much traffic is a super risk for your business, right? Because it could go up, could go down. How do you alleviate that risk? It's by building infrastructure around that piece, building out infrastructure or foundational content that can support this piece so that it's not so wavy. It's not going to go up and down. What if you have a competitor that's publishing aggressively on your topics? What do you do? Those types of scenarios need to be, objectively measured and, quantified before you invest as well. And that's something that people don't really look at. Relying too much on an article from 2017 that generates traffic for your site is not a good idea. And I know there's people sitting at home with their red pages. They're glad that they're
credit for like the traffic going like this and don't want to tell them that it's really from one post that it's happening from.
Yeah, don't get red in the face. Your camera's not on.
We're all doing it.
Yeah. I mean, if something hasn't been updated in a very long time, you are at risk. It's just a blunt. And then the key is the double bind that people are put in is they're afraid to touch that piece because they're so reliant on it, right? So what we work with teams is like, get out of that gear. You've got to expand it. You got to make it better. You've got to support it. You got to build that infrastructure. It's not just about the roof, right? You got to have that foundation. And then the organization, some teams, their editorial calendar is made 6 months in advance, not by them. If their CEO orders them to write a content item, they write it. I want to make sure we put our best foot forward every time we do publish something, right? That even if we're not in control of what that is, so that next time the hack comes around and we say, hey, everything you asked us to do performed at its highest possible level. Maybe I should get another couple $100,000 next year to pick the wins, show the quick wins, achieve our goals, and not just do what everybody says we should do, because I'm very, very confident in my ability to do that and make sure that I publish only content that's equal to or better than my competitors every time. And that's the goal of MarketMuse. We want to make sure that you can do that. So this is the fun part. I'm going to show it, right? I'm going to show how we look at a site and some really interesting workflows that aren't available anywhere else. Looking at a site from a standpoint of an on-demand topic inventory and content inventory or audit. Walk through what a content brief could look like. And I'm going to show a standard brief. We also have customization, how one then can submit that brief into a natural language generation platform that acts as a guardrails for the generation platform to begin building out draft content. I'm going to build I can't show exactly how everything works. So I've done a model and a simulation. I'm not allowed to show everything, but I'm going to show you a few things that you will not see anywhere else for natural language generation, and then show how we bring that into the authoring process today. And then in one of those workflows where I'm only showing it here, you'll see how it could be brought in to the authoring process. I'm going to then show how we can optimize and do competitive analysis with the same data in a way that you've never seen before, unless you've seen these screens. All right. You ready, Paul? This is fun.
Good.
All right.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
All right. Very exciting transition. Escape button pressed into the topics inventory. All right. It loaded. Live demos.
Works.
All right, cool. So what I've done is I've done a filtered view of all the topics that Marketing Artificial Intelligence Institute site could care about, looking at our replacement pay-per-click value as a source. So this is basically saying, if you were to have to go buy the traffic that's being generated by these topics, this is how much it would cost, right? But one unique thing that MarketMuse provides is a metric for topic authority. And we're the only in-market solution that shows you this. This is your breadth of coverage, your depth of coverage. When you cover this topic and semantically related ones, how well do you typically do it? And how much momentum has that yielded for you? In addition to off-page factors. So some people, when you hear authority, are just thinking, oh, this means links. No, we're looking at the structure of your site and how well you cover these topics to denote a normalized metric that gives you a sense and predictability for content that you create on these topics. We also show commodity data, like I mentioned, search volume and seasonality. But two things that we use artificial intelligence for is to calculate intent. So that's a favored intent of a particular topic, and how fractured that intent is. So that means that if you cover this topic, you've got to speak to multiple stages of the buy cycle, or just one is prevailing. Does that make sense? So no simple, when you see it here, is answering a question. It's saying, hello, what's the capital of North Dakota? It's Bismarck. No is early stage awareness content. So when people are answering the question, what is this? Versus when they're looking at specific kind of like early stage awareness content, it's a big difference. And then we calculate difficulty, but we do it differently. We calculate the quality and the comprehensiveness of the content that we're competing with, not just their links, which is what kind of the standard bears. So when you combine those two things, it becomes extremely predictive. So our competitive advantage says, how predictive is it that if we write on these topics or update on these topics, will we be able to make an impact? And our other major innovation is personalized difficulty. This answers the question. This is all you really need to remember. How hard will it be for us to rank in organic search for this topic? And if we create and update content on this topic, how likely is it to move the needle, and how much content do we need to create? So when this number is really low, we might be able to knock that out with one page, updating a page or creating a page. When that number is high, we need to do a more foundation building effort.
Yeah, and I mean, just for like context, what's the alternative? People are running keyword searches. Maybe they're going to like LinkedIn and seeing how many people are in a profession, and you're coming with some data probably behind how you figure this stuff out. But imagine if you're the one that actually knows how to come with AI-powered data to make the argument about why you should be publishing and when you should be publishing and things like that.
Right. And
so it's a different approach.
I'm going to show, and it allows us to say, here's how much content we need to create or update on this topic to actually move the needle as well. And so I'm going to just show you how quick, in 2 or 3 seconds, I can create a topic that says, and these are some quick wins for Marketing Artificial Intelligence Institute. So these are things that if we go out and write one article about it or updates a couple of pages, MarketMuse is going to predict that we're going to have upside advantage. Facebook AI ads. You did a blog on Pencil Spotlight. If you went and wrote out something that specifically focused on Facebook AI ads and did that comprehensively, you'd have an outside advantage to win. Now, how else are you going to have that level of confidence and predictability? Now, let's do it at the top. Let's do it at the page level, right? I've got a page. We associate topics with pages. How many things does this page about? We also have the only in-market metric for authority. So we can actually see and say this page covers the topics that it talks about really, really well. It has a lot of momentum, and it has the ability to be a beacon or a centralized associated power that new pages can use. We also summarize all the search demand on the topics that are associated with this page and add them together to say, what's that upside opportunity? So if we continue to focus on this and related topics, improve this page and write cluster components or surrounding pages of this, here's how much traffic we have the opportunity to actually connect with. We then quantify that in potential value and how much of that potential value is unrealized. We also show the search intent. So let's just say I want to do a quick analysis of everything we've written about analytics. We've written 6 articles. 5 out of the 6 have outsized positive authority. By the way, that's amazing. Kudos, Paul. Kudos, Mike.
And Mike.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. We also have 3 really, really strong. Anything above a 1, by the way, in our system, it means it's really important to take note. But you've got a cluster of 6 pieces. Now, I've got thousands of topics that we've connected to these things. What does that yield? A whole bunch of ideas.
So is that the concept of the topic cluster? I mean, that's a concept a lot of us have heard about, in
Yes.
recent years, is building these topic clusters.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a way for us to see our existing one, and we can actually make this query more robust than just a search query. We can actually look at we can look at an ORD Boolean, says anything of analytics or this or that if we really want to build out a more refined cluster. But
Okay.
even just at a glance, I can look and say, these are my 4 pages that if I weave these together, I can use them as a power source for anything new that I create. I'm going to be able to look at 645 topics that I've associated with this page and say, this isn't even close to on the nose for intent with regard to, I don't even give a definition on this. What is AI analytics? Maybe I need an article. That's what is AI analytics? That's an example of intent mismatch. We're already ranking 5th or 3rd. We were 5th, now we're 3rd. I can go write an on the nose definition here, and I can bet it's going to win. And that's what an intent mismatch plan looks like.
So basically, when you're building your editorial calendar, you go get the low hanging fruit, those quick wins, make those the first 20 posts you do.
Yeah, exactly. And then being able to look and say, oops, I created a empty filter. Being able to look this and also say, what do I have that's transactional or comparison, middle of the funnel on this topic? All right, so now I'm going to go look at my analytics content. It's all early stage awareness. What about that, Paul? Maybe you need some middle of the funnel or some late stage content. Maybe you need to compare analytics packages. Maybe you need to compare features and benefits. That's going to guide the rails for you for building plans. And we're going to be able to predict explicitly how well they're going to do and how much money they can make for us in the form of PPC replacement dollars. You can also feed in your revenue, your RPM data if you want to replace this. If we like to use PPC replacement value because it's kind of a general data point. Make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Love what I see. Site's very powerful. All right, now going back. Making briefs. Let's say we wanted to write an article about natural language processing. I'm not going to go into the brief building workflow, but basically you can build out the sections. You can make recommendations and topics, questions you want to answer, etc. But the output is a source of truth you can share with a writer. Click, give them the link. They don't even need access to your MarketMuse account. During this process, I can also look at my competitive heat map, related topics, which I'm going to get into details, and statistics about my site with regard to this specific topic. So while I'm here, I can see how much potential there is for a topic. I can look at the search features, search engine results page features. There's a featured snippet here. There's a knowledge panel. There's site links. There's reviews. I can look at the general difficulty, how hard it's going to be for us. We've got a lot of work to do here, Paul. I can also see the intent breakdown of the organic search experience. So 65% of this content is very basic, telling me basic, what is it? And an answer. 35% is more awareness based. So I know to cover this topic well, I need to address the basic response. And I also need to get into an early stage awareness or a guide content item to tell the story that's being told. What this also tells me is because there's fracture, I need to cover the entire buy cycle. I need comparison content. I need late funnel content. I need expert content. I need beginner content. The more fractured the intent, the more content I need to create to really tell the story of what it means to be an expert on a topic. That would be different than like, how do you get bees out of your garage? That's really, really specific intent. There's only one way that that article is going to go. But if someone's searching for natural language processing, it could be at all stages of the funnel. And MarketMuse is the only solution that quantifies that and gives you the ability to actually take action against it. And by building content briefs like this one, where it's telling us we've got to make this content item as at least this comprehensive, we expect that an expert would need this length to succinctly cover this topic. We also get into questions that need to be answered elegantly and woven into your article, not just like making an FAQ, like weave these into the narrative. Title recommendations by looking at cohort, competitors, but also things that nobody is talking about that MarketMuse thinks would set us apart and differentiate us. What subheadings should we consider? And also subheadings that might be differentiated, that don't exist out there, that MarketMuse thinks are relevant. It could give us even ideas for new pages in that cluster in the subhead section. We then build a topic model that says, if I were an expert and I were covering this topic comprehensively, what are the concepts that I would naturally include in this page or this collection of content that I'm building? So basically, what does that mean? If I'm going to write an article about natural language processing and I don't talk about sentiment analysis and deep learning, that's an illustration that I'm not an expert in natural language processing. Deep breath there, because what that means is like a whole bunch of people who do just keyword research aren't going to catch that. That's the way organic search works now. That's the way the search engines work now. They understand what it would mean to be an expert. If your content doesn't do that and it's too keyword centric and it's not concept centric and entity centric, over time, your site will degrade and you won't have a leg to stand on to tell the story that you're an expert. So
because the back end of all of this is you're all impacted by AI every day because Google's search engine keeps getting smarter and smarter because it's using similar concepts of large language models and understanding of intent on search, that it's now expecting smarter content to answer questions in totally different ways than keyword stuffing of, the mid 2000 teens.
Yes, the level of quality of content is only going up, and it's going to get even bigger and better. The time to publish content that's spun, the time to publish content that's low quality or peppers in words because of keyword density. I mean, right now, write the ticket to 0. I mean, you might see a little boost if you're doing things like that, but you have no longevity. And we see it time and time again when people kind of come back to working with us after they've been kind of sold on an idea that there's a way to trick the system, or that they've just really, really damaged their brand. We can't damage our brands if it's a real brand. If the site goes down and we can go build a new site from scratch every time that happens, okay, gamble. But I'm not into that. I want to build long-term value for the brands that I work with. And so think about this. I've got this brief. Now I'm going to submit this brief into a natural language generation platform. And I'm not going to make this super complicated, but it's what really differentiates MarketMuse. There are general language models. They're built off of, let's say, like a big bunch of text. Let's say it's Wikipedia. It's not that in many examples, but let's just say you built a language model off of Wikipedia. It would be able to write general content when prompted with a request. So, hey, go write me an article about natural language processing. It would look at the language model built that was built with Wikipedia, and it will start to write. It will start to try to predict the next word and start to make sentences. And based on the quality of the language model, it will be good or it will be bad, whatever. So what MarketMuse aims to do is 2 things. One, we want to build topic expert language models. So not just general language model. We want a language model specifically built on AI and natural language processing. So we will go out, in addition to our general language model, we will go out and research natural language processing. So just imagine a researcher reading every article it can possibly find on this topic, and then tuning a language model to write as if they really knew a lot about natural language processing. So far, so good. The next phase of that is we feed it this brief. This brief sets the guardrails. So then when it starts to write, it's writing from a lens of expertise, and it's writing to achieve on these guardrails.
And just to clarify, so far the human's role has basically been to tell the machine what to generate a brief on, and then to tell the machine to turn that into a brief.
And they have, if they're in our self-serve experience with the briefs, they will have picked and validated the sections of the brief, the questions they would like to include. They can add their own, or they can choose ones that are recommended. That makes sense?
Yep.
So then
you're basically an AI-powered editor at this point.
Yeah, you are a stamp. You put a stamp on the brief, or you can add to the brief. Now I'm submitting this. And so what's happening here? Ready for the two fun parts of this? Two extremely fun. All right, it's going to be quick. Watch it. We build the draft. We build it by breaking down the brief into questions and relevant topics. And that trained model begins to build and starts to write. And then it will go section by section, validate. It judges itself. It judges the quality of each of its sections independently. And it grades itself. And if it doesn't like it, do over. If it doesn't like it, do over. And it will continue until it hits our minimum bar for quality.
So the machine wrote this.
The machine absolutely
from the brief.
This draft right here from the brief we just looked at. All right. So now, what is one experience you might expect in here? I'm going to show you what you might see on that approved first draft. Inside that brief that we looked at, we provide the draft that was generated in a right rail tab so that it can be a point of reference for your writer. So you not only have your competitive heat map, which allows me to look at my competitors and seeing what they're doing. You look at the related topics that make up the topic model. I have the brief as a point of reference and the source of truth, but I can also hop right in and look at the generated draft and see if I like it. Or it might inspire me to build out the narrative that I like a little bit better. But I can take these things in full sections. It immediately grades the section against the model, tells me what topics were included and weren't. I can also immediately put myself head to head against any of these competitors who I'm referencing. What have they done? What have I done? I can go in and I can add text to this and author right in the editor. I can go through and say, no, I don't really like this section. Let me pull this out. Or, ooh, I just like this paragraph. So I can walk through this model and import sections separately. Maybe there's some sections that were a little malformed. I don't even want to include those, but I like this one. I bring that right in. And then I can edit those things.
And is this original, and we're going to leave some time here for questions, but is this original content? Like, is this, this isn't scraped content from Wikipedia. This is original content being generated by the machine.
It is completely original content being created by our artificial intelligence natural language generation platform. It is not using GPT-3 or any product of OpenAI or any open source library. Every time we create a first draft, it is a custom language model built on the MarketMuse first draft NLG system. And it is completely free of plagiarism as well as extractive summarization.
But as the product name says, like, it is intended that a human actually takes this draft and enhances it, edits it, you know, does whatever checking they need to do. It's not meant to, again, just totally remove the human from the loop here.
You have to research the competitive landscape, the intents, the topics that are included. You have to enhance this. You have to check facts, any proper nouns, numbers, and those types of things. Plus, this is a basic guide in early stage awareness, right? All different types of content can be generated, and you're going to get a different type of experience. If you're looking at comparisons, if you're looking at listicles, all those experiences are going to be different. And there's going to be a radical adjustment to your processes. It's very hard to get used to. It's like the first time you ever use spell checker. You're like, this is never going to work. Or Grammarly, gosh, this is a way to amplify your situation so that instead of publishing 6 wonderful articles just with briefs, you might actually be able to get the entire cluster out this month and be happy with the quality. It's not about a magic trick. It's about you putting stuff out that's you're proud of and that you've improved and you've added production value and you've added a narrative to maybe where it's a little bit generic, and you've really put your team's lens of expertise on it. If you publish stuff right out of a generation, it's as if you were to buy content from a writing network and not look at it before you publish it. It makes no sense. It's not something you would ever do. So treat this as if it's another writer on your team. And you, if you were a content strategist or a search professional or an editor, would absolutely take that, wordsmith it, enhance it, improve it, weave it together with other content, do all of those things. So don't treat this differently. Don't think this is a magic box that's doing something that can't be done. I'm going to show you one more screen just to show what's possible.
And then get your questions ready. We're going to have time for questions after
What's
this.
possible inside an editor, type of page, build me an outline on the fly, approving that outline, building content. This is coming, and it can be built using topic expert models.
Cool.
And that is where I will weave back in to what do you do after you publish. After I publish this article, I can then continue to check on it. How well is it covering this topic? This is the topic model that says, if I were an expert, how would I cover this topic comprehensively? I would include all of these concepts. How well did I do that? What does MarketMuse model, which gives a relative distribution, say? This article is crushing it, right? Obviously, because it's being built with MarketMuse, but there's still stuff that has gaps. We don't talk about text planning, computational linguistics, NLG techniques, business intelligence, NLG applications, right? So we still have absolute gaps against the model. We can also put ourselves head to head against any one of our competitors. So let's go head to head against TechTarget, wink, and look at the things that they didn't include that we did, or the things that neither of us have included, because that's important to us. Where they've talked about computational linguistics, we haven't. Neither of us talked about text planning. One is an explicit head-to-head gap analysis. This means we're both gapped, but MarketMuse says that it's relevant. So that's a way for us to differentiate against our head-to-head competitor. So giving us two ways to examine a page against the golden topic model, but then against any one of our competitors for absolute gaps, as well as dual gaps that allow us to differentiate. So it's not just about being like them, it's about being differentiated from them and better at them than them at the things that they're approaching too. This editor is available, and you can analyze text that is an active URL or draft content that has not been published. It's also really cool because you can scan through it and see where you have coverage of the topics that MarketMuse thinks are important. So if you saw a section of this page that you don't have any because Mike's so awesome, but if you saw a section of this page that was like blank, that you would know that was fluff or was about a different topic. So if I were to search for a different query, let's say I'm talking about garage management, we're going to go back and we'll look at that. It's going to tell me that this is the worst article ever for garage management. So now we are able to take this topic model and overlay it against all the competitors all at once. So this is the exact same model all in one view. This is the search engine optimization professional's best friend. We're going and building the perfect topic model over here, and then we're overlaying it against the competition. So we can see explicitly who has great content and who doesn't, and why. The why. What are the things that they cover? So I like to break these things down into two things: table stakes topics and differentiation topics. Table stakes topics are things that everyone mentions already, and that is achieving success. So in layman's terms, if I want to cover natural language generation and I don't talk about natural language or NLG or language or data, obviously I don't know what I'm talking about. But the power is also in the red lines and the stuff where not a lot of people are talking about it, which differentiates this from a term frequency or keyword density or correlation solution, of which there are dozens in the market. Please do not use them. I do not want you crying on my shoulder. You want the information about what matters and is what semantically related. You also want the stuff that nobody's talking about that really could differentiate your content. I like to say the money is in the red lines. The more red you see, these are things that MarketMuse thinks are very relevant, but not a lot of people are talking about. Those are ways that you can differentiate your content, especially if you're in a tough head-to-head race against a competitor. So basically, this is a way to take content that's already been written or is part of the funnel or is in part of the process and enhance it and make sure it's bulletproof. Going back to it, upgrading it, updating it, making sure the intent is current. Because let's say the intent of this topic changed, you might see some new competitors flop in. You might see, like, imagine last year in January, if you were competing for the word clubhouse, right? That search results and the meaning of that word was different. Now there's a mixed intent. Now it could be something you're building for your children in the backyard or the audio-based social network. There's going to be mixed intents. There's going to be mixed meanings in the search results. You can
isolate. If you were Delta and now you got to compete with a virus.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, but you've got meaning disambiguation. So let's say you could see a few of these are about a different word meaning, but you can also see some of these people are approaching this like a definition. Other people are approaching it like a comprehensive guide. Well, what does that look like? If someone's just giving me a basic definition, what does that look like in the form of a topic model versus someone like Medium, which this is a comprehensive guide. So it's really cool to be able to say the intent of this expert writer was to write a middle of the funnel piece. This is what that looks like. This intent of this person was a definition. That's what this looks like. So when you pair your brain of looking at the page and saying, what's this about? And then look at what that looks like. It's like giving you an X-ray on what intent means to a prevailing page today, or what one meaning means to something else.
Let's jump to some questions here. Let's see if people got.
By the way,
Mike's time.
Mike's article was not very good for garage management. All right, that's the punchline. Now I'm going to hop back in and back to my slides, and I'll do some questions.
All right. So there you go.
And thank you.
Yes, thank you. So, all right. So if you have any questions, Q&A is open. The chat is open. I mean, I think about who is impacted by this and who has the opportunities, because I see content strategists for sure, content creators, but then also SEO professionals. So I think about like what the impact is going to be on those careers. And do you see, as this kind of technology gets infused into everything everybody's doing, is it going to obsolete people, or is it just creating massive opportunities for people to upskill and do smarter work?
Upscale and do smarter work. I think the people that are going to have a lot of problem here are two groups. One is people who will tend to desire to game the system.
Okay.
The system can't be gamed for long term. So it's going to lead to a lot of short-term heartache. That's already happening in the world of natural language generation with a number of the prevailing platforms. The other is low quality content creators. And that kind of sucks. But basically the bar for what is the meets minimum for quality of content is going up. My goal and the mission of MarketMuse is to set the standard for content quality. But the shadow goal there is to rid the world of bad content. And so this is one of the motions to make that true. So those are the two jobs, I think, if you are, trying to cut corners, this is going to be a hard time. And then also if you're writing content that isn't expert content or that isn't high quality, you're going to be in trouble. Writing networks are in trouble. They're going to have to require additional managed services, and that the bar has to be a lot higher for quality. And you already see that happening. Writing networks are stepping up. All the really good ones are increasing the bar.
Scott asked, are there any statistics around increased effectiveness, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel? Did you see any averages or examples from past customers you've worked with in terms of the impact it can have when done right?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's it's fun because it's so ridiculous that the numbers don't even make sense a lot of times. But we have a collection of case studies, which I'm certainly able to point to. It's not just even about the performance, but it's also about the predictability. And so there's case studies out there where sites go from 6,000 to 500,000 visitors a month.
I want that. Do that for me.
That is, but it's, there's also teams that are able to put out 4 times the content and be proud of all of it, and they can predict the outcomes. And then there's everywhere in between. What I can say is we work with one person shops. We also work with all the largest publishers in the world. And I can say that confidently. And many of them, a great majority of them, large e-commerce, large B2B tech, all the way to, small startups. There's a way my goal is that everyone will have access to our optimization technology so that they can make sure that they're writing high quality content every time. And right now, I'm really happy to say that is the case. You can do that today, regardless of what your budget is.
And that's cool because a lot of people always ask, is this just an enterprise thing? Any AI tool, everybody kind of assumes you need a bunch of data and you have to have a huge budget to use AI, and it is just not true. There are literally thousands of applications of AI that can help you.
2 years ago, 2 years ago we were, and we fought hard because we weren't fulfilling the business's mission. The business's mission was that everyone would optimize content and improve content and enhance content with MarketMuse, no matter what. And we were like, wow, we have a couple hundred customers and they're all mid-market to enterprise. We're not achieving that business goal. And so we have taken 4 big steps, and now the vision is here.
All right, so the link to the case studies is in the chat.
Cool.
Kathy put that up there if you want to grab that. And then we'll kind of wrap with this one because I think it's a good kind of, again, like making all this tangible. So let's say a marketing manager who maybe today is either editing their blog or creating some of the content for the blog, but involved certainly in the content strategy and the production. Maybe it's just managing a production team. Step by step, like what does that person need to do to kind of onboard? Like, is this a 3-month onboarding and training process before you can even use all these tools? Or is it something you can actually get in, like step 1, you do like a 2-hour, workshop to learn it. Step 2, you train people and things. Step 3, you start creating briefs. Like, what does that look like for people, just so they can understand how to go from what they are today to AI powered tomorrow?
The way I like to describe the kind of 3 tiers I call it product maturity. But sometimes the word maturity is like, what are you trying to say? I'm immature. But no, it's kind of your maturity with these types of products. The things that are more familiar are going to be able to be adopted more quickly. So because you're used to using an editor and getting information, supplementing that editor, a lot of times the optimization workflow is easy for folks to understand because they're used to spell check, they're used to Grammarly. If you've noticed, use Grammarly inside my MarketMuse.
I did notice.
And a spell checker, all 3 of them. And so you're used to that. You're used to getting that feedback. You have never likely received feedback on how to make the article better from a quality and comprehensiveness perspective, but you at least understand the idea of getting that. So that's something that you pick up very quickly. So how does that relate to a statement of maturity? It says, every time I update content or evaluate content, I want that to be informed by MarketMuse data. So that would be a statement of somebody who, like, first day, that's something you want to pledge to yourself. The second is, every time I author or create content, I want that to be informed by, I want it before any pencil goes to paper, before any key gets typed, I want it to be informed by MarketMuse data. And that typically will manifest in the form of a content brief, a topic model, research on competitive landscape, questions to answer, and internal and external linking recommendations. That can be manually done with our applications, or it can be done in an automated way with content briefs. So basically my second tier is to say, anytime I author something, before I do that, I'm making the decisions about what I write, and I'm getting closer to execution using this technology. The third tier, which is the from a product market maturity perspective, is the hardest for people because maybe they're not even used to using data to inform, is every time I build a content plan or decide that I'm going to create or update content, I want to use MarketMuse data to inform and justify that investment. So that third tier is really, that's where our kind of more advanced clients, that is going to take typically someone a couple weeks to get to that state, going through a training session and onboarding session, where you'll learn to adapt some of your workflows that prioritize today into those types of workflows and start to use data points you've never used before. You know, you don't use topic authority today. You don't use personalized difficulty today. You don't use topic volumes or page authority, because those pages, those data points don't exist anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So how do I involve them into our workflow? And the coolest way we do that is to say, you know, what would a content budget proposal look like internally? So I want 40 grand to write 30 articles and update 15. And here's my level of confidence that that's going to be successful. And what we find is that when people are thinking about, whoa, this is going to make me more effective, and have everybody on the team get aligned onto why we're doing stuff, that's when teams will start to adopt and work together. When a content marketing manager like you, who asked the question, is working well with their SEOs and their editorial teams, that's when stuff happens.
We were at the top of the hour, Jeff. Awesome, as always. Definitely AI in action. It was cool to see the behind the scenes. So if people haven't seen it before, you kind of have a really good idea now of natural language processing and generation at work. Mm-hmm. So thank you to Jeff. Join us tomorrow for the final in the 6-part series with Drift. And we hope to see you then. And don't hesitate to reach out in the meantime if there's anything we could do. And Jeff, real quick, flip to the last slide for me. If you haven't checked out or registered for Marketing AI Conference yet, go one more. There is an AI in Action code. There it is, AI in Action 25. It's coming up fast. We're 12 days away from the conference. So hope you can join us. Jeff, thank you again as always, man.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Cheers.
All right.